Hello, in this video we'll show you how to change the router bit on your Hoffmann X-20 Dovetail routing machine. First thing you want to do whenever you change a bit or do any kind of maintenance on your machine is to unplug the power cord. It's really not enough to just switch off the motor. You want to unplug the cord. I'd like to have the plug visible in my line of sight whenever I'm working on the machine. The reason for that is, say your machine is plugged into a 20-30 foot extension cord and you simply unplug the cord from the wall, you're working on the machine, changing the bit, co-worker walks in and sees the unplugged extension cord, plugs it back in, you're going to have a bad day. So unplug it, keep the plug in your line of sight and you're safe. Once we have that, I'll take my miter plate off, simply so I have a bit more room to work. And now I raise the motor up on the X-20 and lock both of my locking levers, which will now keep the bit about ½ inch above the machine table. Below the motor, on the back of the machine, in the motor bracket, is a 6mm Allen bolt. Use a 6mm Allen wrench, and I'm loosening up the motor, and I can now slide it out and place it on the machine. 530 watt motor, you use a 17 and a 14mm open end wrench and simply loosen the collet. Now you notice once you loosen the collet nut spins freely for about one turn and then it tightens again. That is a safety feature. While it's spinning freely, it will not release the router bit. If you try to pull the bit out now, you will cut your fingers, the bit won't come out. So once it spins freely, you turn it by hand until it's tight again, and then just reset your two wrenches and get over that little safety hump. Now it's open and the bit comes out easily. Set the old bit aside, get a new bit, install it, and just hand tighten it for now. The next thing I'd like to do is we'll take the old chip breaker out, and I use a small Allen wrench here, take the bolt out, and that little chip breaker comes right out. Let's set that here. Put the motor back in the machine. When you slide the motor back in, do not slide it all the way in until it bottoms out. Keep it back about 3/30 seconds, 2 millimeters. So you have a little space between the front of the motor and the motor bracket. That'll give you some adjustment later. To set the right projection of the router bit, you use your square stop that came with the machine. Take the handle off and take the square stop out, and if you turn it around, you'll see you have W1, 2, 3 and W4 engraved to the corresponding steps that are machined in the stop. What you do is you take it out, flip it upside down, and since we're using a W2 router bit, I'm going to use the medium step, and now I slide it in. It's important that you take the stop out of the track and use it upside down. When the stop is in the track, there's a slight gap between the tip of the stop and the back fence, and you won't get an accurate reading. So take it out, turn it over, and then use it as a setup gauge. We now take the motor back out because we still need to tighten the collet. You don't want to turn the motor on when the collet's not tight. So you set it here, again 14 and 17, and just tighten it up. You don't need to bear down on it, but you want it tight. Motor goes back in the machine bracket. You use your setup gauge again, and now you tighten the bolt on the underside with your Allen key, and there you go. Next step, we'll lower the motor back below the table. We can now plug the machine back in, and to check our setting, we'll simply make a joint and some sample molding. So put the miter plate back on and use your orange handle here. I'll take 2 pieces of sample molding simple make a cut. Set the two keyways and insert a dovetail key. Now when you insert the key, you can tell right away if the setting is correct or not. Make sure the tip is nice and tight, key goes in, and as you drive the key in, you want to be sure that it also pulls the joint tight. So the setting is good. What I do now is I switch the motor off, but I keep it plugged in this time. And I raise it up a little bit higher, so I get a little bit more room. Now, you can either use your old chip breaker. If the chip breaker is not damaged, if it's not torn out on the top at all, if it's nice and clean, you can install the old chip breaker back in. If you have some damage on it, I will show you how to install a new chip breaker. They are shipped uncut because we never know what size router bit the customer would like to use. So they're square without a cut. And you insert chip breaker in here. Use a little Allen wrench and you tighten it up. And this is important that the chip breaker is installed with the motor up, and the first cut through the chip breaker needs to be made from the top down. You'll see here that the router bit kind of sits in the chip breaker, so you couldn't install the chip breaker with the bit underneath it, it wouldn't fit. So raise the bit, new chip breaker is in. I take a piece of scrap molding that I have here and I place it on top of my chip breaker. If I simply cut through it now without anything on top, I will likely tear up the top of that chip breaker, and that defeats the purpose of it, that I may as well not have one installed. So tighten up the screw, put a piece of molding on top. You can slide the plate forward to hold it a little bit, lower the hold down, open up both handles and turn the motor back on, and just slowly lower the motor down. Now you see a perfectly cut chip breaker right at the right setting to the router bit without any tear out on top. As a next step, you can do one more test cut if you like, and your machine is now set up with a new router bit ready to go.